Continuing on with problem PA2-2, requirement 2 says record the transaction effects determined in requirement 1 using a journal entry format. Now the journal entry format is shown on page 58 on the left side of exhibit 2.9. It's also shown on the next page on the left side of exhibit 2.10, and finally it's shown on page 63 on the left side of exhibit 2.1. Journal entries are recorded in a debit and credit format. Now I have included a handout on the Laulima website entitled The Accounting Equation, and I think that does a pretty good job of showing you the accounting equation with T accounts and debits and credits, which represent either pluses or minuses to various accounts. Something I haven't said up to now, I always try to use blue, the colors blue and red, when I do transaction work like this using account categories or major categories like in the accounting equation. A blue account, which basically are assets and expenses, blue accounts are debit balance accounts. On the other hand, the red accounts, which are the three categories in the middle of the accounting equation, are credit balance accounts. Now it's important, I think, that you refer to the text material and also refer to the accounting equation handout that I've included on the Laulima website. And you know, print it out if you can in color, ideally, because then the colors will show. And keep in mind that the debit for every account category is always the left side of the account. The credit for every account category is always the right side of the account. So debits are always the left side, credits are always the right side. The difference is whether it's a plus or a minus for each account category. That's the difference. And so the way it works, and I'm going to explain this here, and it takes a while before it kind of sinks in. Accounting is one of those things where the more you do it, the easier it gets, the more it makes sense. So again, assets and expenses are debit balance accounts. That means the debit side is the plus side. The credit side would be the minus side. The three categories in the middle, liabilities, owner's equity, and revenues, are credit accounts. That means the credit side is the plus side. And conversely, the debit side would be the minus side. I'm just going to let it go at that. And again, you need to have that printout of that handout and keep it handy and use it when you're working through your assignment material. So what the problem is asking us to do is to first record the transactions that we've already done here in the accounting equation format. Record them in general journal format. So let's go ahead and do that. For transaction A, issued 4,000 shares of stock for $400,000 of cash. We added to cash and we added to contributed capital under equity. And so our journal entry would be to debit cash, add to cash, 400,000, and credit and I'm going to call this account contributed capital, 400,000. And again, that is our transaction A. For transaction B, we borrowed 90,000 cash from a local bank, payable June 30th, 2012, payable in 2 years. We added to cash on the left side of the equation under assets, so we debit cash for $90,000. And we added to a liability. This was a loan, so we added to notes payable with a credit of $90,000. Transaction C is a transaction that affected 3 accounts. Transaction C, we bought a factory building for $182,000, so we added to factory building with a debit. Debit factory building, $182,000. We made a cash payment of $82,000, so we are subtracting from the asset cash. Cash is a debit account. We add to assets with a debit. We subtract from assets with a credit. So since we are paying cash, we are crediting cash in the amount of $82,000. And our third account is for the 3-year note payable for the balance of that transaction. We bought it for $182, we paid cash of $82, so we owe $100 under a note payable to the seller of the building. So that is a liability which we will add to credit notes payable in the amount of $100,000. Is that transaction in balance? Yes, it is. We have a debit of $182 and 2 credits, which together add up to $182. So we're in balance. Transaction D, paid cash for equipment, $200,000. We are adding to equipment. We're buying equipment, so we are adding to the asset equipment, $200,000. So we debit equipment for $200,000, and we are paying cash. Again, cash is an asset. We are making a payment of cash, so cash is going to be reduced, and so we subtract from an asset, we subtract from cash with a credit. Of $200,000. Now, I didn't do a real good job of separating my amounts here, but basically the way it works is we record debits always on the left side, and we record credits over to the right side. Debits are on the left, credits are on the right. So I just did a little indentation for each of these transactions. The last transaction, transaction E, purchase supplies for $30,000 on account. Again, we purchase supplies, which is an asset. We add to supplies, $30,000. We add to an asset with a debit. and that debit account is called supplies, and that's for $30,000. And our credit, we are buying that on credit or on account, so that means we owe for those supplies at a later date. So an amount we owe is a liability. We add to a liability with a credit, and that liability, a short-term liability for purchase of supplies or other expendables of that nature, we would use accounts payable. And so we credit accounts payable. So each transaction is recorded in the journal format using debits and credits. Debits recorded on the left, credits recorded on the right. And for each and every transaction, the debit total, the left side total, and the credit total, the right side total, must be equal. Left side equal right side, debits equal credits. Now, I think we need to break this again for a third segment.